thank God you're here for this because you're the Hall of Fame voter. I'm not. So you can give us better insight than anyone about some of these guys out there. And we tripped into this rabbit hole yesterday with Matt Ryan because we talked about what he needs to do to get to the Hall of Fame because he's closing in on 50,000 passing yards and 300 touchdown passes. And nobody really seems to notice that Matt Ryan's had a special career that is still going strong. So let's consider some other guys that are maybe on the fringe right now and that maybe a Super Bowl win would give them that kind of lift that they need to get the bronze bust in Canton. And I want to start with Phillip Rivers because Phillip Rivers has had a hard time standing out among his peers for a variety of reasons, one of which is he hasn't played in a Super Bowl and so clearly hasn't won a Super Bowl. Would that make a huge difference in your mind if Phillip Rivers, everything he's already done, that stays the same, but you throw a special season, obviously, and a Super Bowl win on top of it?
I'm glad you started with him, Mike, because I would have started with him too. You know, he does rank in the top 10, and passing touchdowns and passing yards is just going to continue to climb because he says he's going to keep playing, and he never seems to get hurt. So the numbers are going to be there. But what else is there? As you pointed out, there's no MVP. There's no All-Pro. He's just played with better quarterbacks within the league at the time he's played. So he's not going to make an all-decade team, even the first team or the second team in the time that he played. So what else does he have? And I think he has to get at least one Super Bowl to be considered for the Hall of Fame. That's where it starts. Now, if he can get multiple Super Bowls, great. And we did talk about him last year at the beginning of the year and into the middle of the year for MVP. And then it kind of went away late in the year and he was out of that talk. So if he can get an MVP award and a Super Bowl, he's there. I mean, I don't know what else you want the guy to do, but that's asking a lot considering his age and how much time he has left to play.
I know there are rules about what you can and can't talk about as it relates to what occurs in the room for the selection committee meeting. But is there any type of standard that gets followed for the guys who aren't obvious, know it when you see it, that guy's in, 2-minute discussion at most, but for a quarterback, is there a formula? Is there a set of factors? What do you look for to decide whether or not you think a quarterback should get in?
Well, I think it's really hard in this day and age because the passing yards have changed so much. The game has changed where the passing yards have gone up. And so it's difficult to compare these guys against even players from, say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago. You just can't because it is a passing league now and you have to be able to pass. So there has to be other things to go with that. But, you know, Kurt Warner's an example. And I realize Kurt Warner's career maybe wasn't as long as some others. Maybe you wanted to see more years in there, but every other box he really checked off. And by the way, it is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's not the NFL Hall of Fame. So Kurt Warner had a great Arena League career. Nobody threw that out in the room, but he did. So it is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But you look at how long it took him to get in and guys like that. So there's no set formula. You just got to check off those boxes. And when you look at a quarterback, does he look like a Hall of Famer? And Phillip Rivers has done some things where you say, yeah, this guy's looked like a Hall of Famer, but I do think he needs a championship. I don't think he's Dan Marino.
Well, Cam Newton looks like the statue you would put out in front of the Hall of Fame. I mean, he really is an imposing physical specimen. He's won an MVP award, and to me, one of the factors is relative dominance. And to stand out among everyone in this era, especially as the best player in the game, is a pretty big deal. Does a Super Bowl win make the difference for him, or does he have to do more than that?
Well, I think it's starting to trend him that way if he can get a Super Bowl because, you know, they went 15-1 the one year they lost it and were heavy favorites to win it that year and didn't get it done. So I think you have to start looking at him if he would get that Super Bowl win to go with the MVP award. Again, he's starting to check off some boxes there, and he's not going to finish probably in the top 10 in passing yards and passing touchdowns and the statistical part of it. But if he has those other things, I think, yeah, then you've got to go, okay, we've really got to consider Cam Newton here. And I think he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer because the numbers wouldn't be there. But I do think you talk about him and eventually he would go in.
Russell Wilson now 30 years of age, and he has that Super Bowl win, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. I feel like some don't give him the respect that he deserves. They think he's a running quarterback, or they think he's a quarterback on a run-first team. Does a second if he retires with one Super Bowl win and he's on the track that he's been on, is that enough, or does he need that second Super Bowl win?
He's a guy I think is going to need that second one just for the reasons you stated. And when we think of great quarterbacks in this league, all-decade players, all-pros, things like that, we really don't. He doesn't pop up to most people. And I do think he's a really good player. He's been terrific in this league. You know, we had him in the MVP conversation last year for what he did. I don't think he's had the people on offense that some other quarterbacks have had around the league. But the numbers aren't going to be there. And I think some people are going to look at him as a running quarterback. A second Super Bowl, though, you really start looking at him a lot harder. And most guys who win 2 Super Bowls, and you can point to Eli Manning eventually, most guys who win 2 Super Bowls get into the Hall of Fame. It may take a while, but this guy probably gets into the Hall of Fame if he can win another one.
Jim Plunkett says, "Where's my bronze bust?" Who knows? Maybe he'll get wedged
eventually
into that
class. Eventually we'll get in.
That 15 person all in or all out class that is scheduled for next year. All right, let's move away from quarterback. Frank Gore is a guy who, in my mind, already should get in. He's 4th all time on the rushing list. He could pass Barry Sanders this year. This guy quietly has had one of the best careers in NFL history of any running back in an era where there aren't many great running backs, so there isn't a lot of competition if you're looking for a running back to put in. I don't think it matters to I think Frank Gore could walk away today, and he already should get in. What are your thoughts on him?
Completely agree with you. I think Frank Gore's done enough to get into the Hall of Fame. Probably not a first ballot guy, but I think he'll get in eventually. And I say not a first ballot guy because you look at the running backs, and some of them have had to wait in recent years. I think he's a guy who might have to wait. But shoot, he doesn't look like the end of his career is anytime close. He just keeps playing and playing and playing and playing really well. And I think he's going to play really well again this season and continue to compile those yards. And I do think he's going to pass Barry Sanders for 3rd all time. And if he's 3rd all time, how do you not put a guy like that in? Super Bowls, no Super Bowls, however many he has, whatever. I just think based on the yards, you have to put that guy in the Hall of Fame.
There are plenty of former Steelers in the Hall of Fame who played receiver. They all have championship rings. John Stallworth, Lynn Swann. I think Hines Ward has an argument to be made to get in. But Antonio Brown, no Super Bowl wins, 1 Super Bowl appearance as a rookie. Now with the Raiders, does a Super Bowl make a difference for him, or does he get in based on his own merit and based on his own production?
Right now, I'd say I need to see a little more longevity from him, maybe a Super Bowl in there. He's probably going to finish with enough yards that you're going to put him in. But if we're talking first ballot, and all guys want to be first ballot guys, you know, obviously with T.O., that's why he didn't go to the Hall of Fame ceremony. He was passed over a couple times, probably shouldn't have been. But if you want to be a first ballot guy, you better check all of the boxes. And that includes a Super Bowl. So that certainly would help him go in first ballot.
Does J.J. Watt need a Super Bowl? If he walks away right now, I think he's done enough that he gets in. What do you think?
I agree with you. I mean, there's only one other guy who's won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and that's Lawrence Taylor. And, you know, I think there's probably going to be another guy out there who's going 3, 4, 5, and that's Aaron Donald. But this guy has been one of the best defensive players in his era. He's going to be on the all-decade team. Yes, I think J.J. Watt's done enough that if he retires tomorrow, he's going to get into the Hall of Fame eventually.
But he wouldn't be a first ballot guy without a Super Bowl win?
Oh, no, I think he would be a first ballot guy. I didn't mean it like that. At 5, he would have to wait his 5 years, obviously, but I think he's a first ballot guy.
Now, Aaron Donald, you mentioned, and I just feel like no matter the guy's on a track right now where when it's all said and done, we may look back on him as the greatest defensive player in NFL history. He's so dominant. He's so disruptive. And I continue to be so stunned that he lasted as long as he did in the first round of the draft in 2014. For him, do you agree it's not going to matter whether or not the Rams win a Super Bowl? This guy does enough that he's going to find a way in regardless of what his team does.
I think you already look at him as one of the best defensive tackles in NFL history. I mean, there's a handful there, and he's one of those guys you go, yeah, if we're going to make a defensive tackle, if God made a defensive tackle, he's it, and he's the guy, and he has been that dominant. He's going to be on the all-decade team. Guys, when they get on all-decade teams, generally go in. There are 7 first ballot all-decade players right now who aren't in the Hall of Fame, and a lot of those guys are going to get in on this Centennial class if it's approved. So we're looking at most all-decade players into the Hall of Fame, and he's going to be one of those guys who's into the Hall of Fame as a first ballot guy.
A couple of guys who were on the Seahawks that won the Super Bowl a few years ago. Bobby Wagner, who's still there, Richard Sherman, who's in Seattle, and I guess we could throw in Earl Thomas as well. Is there going to be a representation of the Legion of Boom or that defense generally in Canton when it's all said and done, or do they need to do more post-2013?
A lot of those guys are really good at their positions. Again, when you go back and look at the all-decade teams, I think some of them are probably going to be on there. I mean, we're into the last year of this decade, and so that's an important thing. When that all-decade team comes out, the players on that list, when you start seeing them, those are the guys who are probably going to be Hall of Famers when it's all said and done. When they retire, 5 years after they retire, they're going to go into the Hall of Fame. And a lot of those Seahawks players, because they've been the best defense in football for a really long time, or were for a really long time, I think a lot of those guys are going to be under consideration come Hall of Fame time when their name's up. And I think they're going to be on the finalist list, and they're going to be discussed, and probably a couple, 2, 3 of those guys get in. Now, it's hard to put a lot in when you only win one Super Bowl. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for as good as their defense was for so long, the John Lynch's and the Simeon Rice's and the Rondé Barbers are still having to wait, because you go, how many guys do you put in off of that defense? Derek Brooks is in, and the Warren Sapp's in. So how many defensive guys do you put in? So that's the only thing I caution with there on that Seahawks defense.
But they should have two. That's what they would say. Yes. They did everything in their power to win a second Super Bowl. It was the offensive play call that prevented that from happening at the end of Super Bowl 49.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.